Welcome, Academy for Advanced Studies students. This is a virtual field trip of some of the projects that are on display currently that have been done by previous students here at the Academy for Science Fair, just to kind of give you guys an idea of the type of projects and maybe how you can connect them to your various pathway classes. Please forgive the fact that some of the things on the boards have fallen off apparently over our nice COVID break and can't quite see everything. We can see it starting with this first project. This was a student, electrical student, who actually developed and created a remote control that could capture code and use it to control any device. I believe it was infrared remotes. This was our student. She actually did not partner with the pathway, but it could partner with construction. She developed a prototype for a backpack holder that would go on the back of the desk and use it to keep the backpack up off of the floor. This particular student, more stuff has fallen off of his board than was on it, but he created an app that compiled information from a variety of sources and would predict if the school would be closed based on information given out by the local weather station. Sorry, I went for a brain fart. This particular student up here was looking at plants around their yard that produced berries and extracted something from the berries and used it as a solar cell. It was really interesting because they were looking at something that was typically a waste product, something poisonous to human and animals, and they were actually turning it into something very, very useful. This particular student, can't quite see everything, but they were one of our 3D engineering students, and they tested a variety of paper airplanes in addition to the 3D printed airplane through Ms. Burns' class to see which one would work the best. And last but definitely not least, this is a project by a student with partnered with cosmetology, and they were researching on hair samples how various relaxers affected the hair. They actually made their own relaxer, which allows us to not be a product comparison, and tested it against a couple of specific brands of relaxers to see which one worked the best. I don't remember specifically what they used to make their original relaxer, but that's where our cosmetology teachers come in their area of expertise. So part one of the field trip out here on the 100 hall, our display case. Part two will be in one of the classrooms. Okay, part two of our virtual science fair field trip. I'm looking at a few other project ideas just to kind of get you thinking about what you can do. If you haven't done so already, make certain to review the categories and subcategories that are listed in the Google Classroom. This particular student had an interest in soccer, so they were looking at if the angle, sorry, I had to double check, if the angle of their kick affected the accuracy of the kick. The really neat thing about this was just the sheer amount of data that particular student did. This student had an interest in fashion and was looking at using fruits and vegetables as a natural dye and testing how well it worked with a variety of fabrics. Now, over time, you can see some of the fabrics have faded, but you can kind of see their original picture. They were testing to kind of see which natural dye would hold up better. This particular student is one of our culinary students, and they worked with our chefs to develop a project where they were seeing the effects of brain fart, yeast versus salt rising, and how it affected the density and the volume, the height, of their bread. This particular student was one of our game design pathway students, and they actually developed this particular game that they played with their friends and cousins, and they created the programming themselves. So again, it's not just an experiment. You can develop a prototype and test it. This particular student is a volleyball student, and they were testing how the pressure of the volleyball affected the accuracy of the serve. This, of course, would require you having access to a couple of people who can serve volleyballs, because you can't just have one participant or one experimenter doing all the data. This is under behavioral science. This particular project, they were looking at if there was any particular K-pop band or music that people seem to enjoy the most. They actually had 100 participants in their survey, and they played them, I want to say it was like 25 songs total, and the participants had to rank each of the songs based on their preference to see, if there was any band that was more preferred over other. And these were people, they're participants who did not necessarily normally listen to K-pop. Now, the neat thing to notice about behavioral science projects, and most any project that involves human participants, is you've got to have a lot of human participants to make certain you don't have any statistical errors. Typically, it's a minimum of 30 per area, but this group actually went above and beyond and managed to get over 100 people to complete their survey. This was one of our ag science students, and they were testing gray water, which is water from like baths and dishes, and reusing it with after filtering with growing plants. The really cool thing about this particular project was that this student was able to use this experiment for 2 different classes. Slightly different layout, but they were able to use it for something in their ag science or ag fair as well. This student actually was not culinary, but it could fall under culinary. They were testing about the type of flour and how it affects the density and the height of cupcakes. This student were looking at nail polish and what additives they could add to the nail polish and how it would affect its longevity. The really nice thing is the fact that they tested it using another medium besides their nails. Since they didn't test it on human subjects, it did not require prior approval. So this was actually a fairly interesting project. They had lots and lots of data. This was a student who was very interested in arts and wanted to become an art major, and they were testing a variety of flowers to see how well it would make paint. I don't remember all the flowers that they tested, but they were comparing the paint thickness and how well it actually went on the canvas. And last but not least in our little tour today, this particular student was testing kitties to see if they had any preference in a type of cat toy. You can kind of see at a glance the sheer amount of data that this particular student had. Even though they did only have 3 cats, they tested them multiple times with each of the individual independent variables. Now, something to note about this. Any project that involves vertebrate animals has to be approved by the county. Science teachers will get you started with that process. You do not have to do anything except completing the forms and your research plan. But there's always a small chance with any project that involves vertebrates, bacteria, and or humans that the county would say that no, we can't do that project. It's not allowed, or that you need to make certain modifications. So that's something where we won't know until we send it in, which probably they won't start meeting those sessions until the end of August, beginning of September. So that is part 2 of our virtual field trip. Hope this has helped you get some additional ideas. Brainstorm, see something that interests you. Pick something that you enjoy and turn it into an experiment. You will get the most out of it. And that is it.